Welcome back to the Lacrosse Lawyer. I'm your host, Attorney Craig Steger, practicing in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. It's been a little while since I live streamed, but wanted to talk about this since it's been in the news quite a bit recently here in my area, the Midwest. And it involves the topic of ATVs and UTVs, and more specifically UTVs and side by sides. The Rangers, the mules, those that involve four wheels, steering wheel, a cab, brakes, gas pedals, all that kind of stuff. Um, they are becoming very, very common, and also being involved in a lot of crashes and injuries, and sometimes even deaths. And I wanted to talk about it because from the perspective of insurance, and I'll get into that here in a moment, as opposed to the legality of it and the safety of it. I'm not covering that in this video. I have covered that recently in other videos. I'll link to a video that I did recently on the importance of wearing seatbelts and actually helmets, but especially seatbelts and UTVs or any kind of an ATV that has a roll cage or a cab or anything like that. Is very, very important that you follow those safety features, because they are designed to keep you inside the vehicle if it does roll over or tip on its side. And if you don't have those safety features, you can actually become harmed or killed by the rollover unit because of the way they're designed. So if you didn't see that video, I encourage you to go check that out. But today I want to talk about insurance. And why am I talking about insurance? So if someone is injured or killed in a crash and they're an occupant, typically a passenger, but let's say they're occupant of a side by side UTV, if if you have a claim, let's say the driver of the UTV is not being careful, maybe they're intoxicated, maybe they're driving too fast, whatever, they may very well be negligent. And then the question is, okay, can you recover against them? Now, as a starting point, if someone is negligent, not driving carefully, driving too fast, or whatever, I mean, they're legally responsible under most circumstances to those that get harmed as a result of it, whether that the person that's injured or harmed is in the vehicle or outside and struck by the UTV. In either respect, the law typically recognizes a claim for negligence against the driver of the UTV or ATV. The problem is that most people aren't independently wealthy, and so they lack, the financial resources to pay for damages caused, especially if there's a severe injury or death. Most people don't have that kind of cash sitting around, and so you're looking to insurance similar to what you're doing if someone is involved in a car accident, or let's say injured at someone's house, and maybe you're looking at homeowners insurance. The reason you're looking at insurance is because that is there to cover and provide liability protection for the policyholder. So one of the reasons you carry car insurance or auto insurance is so that if you cause a crash, you have liability protection, so that if someone else has a claim against you, your auto insurance actually steps into place and provides both a legal defense, so they hire lawyers for you, and also pays damages caused by your negligence while driving a car. Likewise, if you are in driving your car and you're injured because of someone else's fault, their car insurance provides liability protection to you. And in cases where you're driving your vehicle and someone else injures you in their car, if they don't have enough insurance, you're looking at uninsured or underinsured coverage under your own auto policies. That's typically how auto policies work. They provide liability coverage for those who caused a crash, and then they provide uninsured and underinsured coverage for you if the other person doesn't have insurance. That's typical auto insurance. The problem is that auto insurance typically does not cover people if they're injured while riding or driving ATVs, and side by sides. There's going to be a number of exclusions that often will apply, um, regardless of whether the person is operating the vehicle on a highway, even if legally, or off road. And so that's really, really important to keep in mind is unless your insurance company specifically provides coverage under your auto policy, if you have an ATV or UTV, you're probably not covered under that for liability purposes while you're driving the UTV. Also, if you're a passenger in that vehicle, you probably don't have coverage under your ATV, under your auto insurance for injuries sustained, even if you're injured by another automobile. Now, this is where it becomes really important to know your insurance policy, talk to your insurance agent, and look at the specifics of your insurance policy and more important, the definitions, because this is where it can become really, really nuanced and important to determine whether an injury arising out of a UTV is covered or not covered under the auto policy. But it's a safe assumption for the most part that most auto policies are going to have an exclusion that prevents you from getting coverage in those situations. So what do you do in that situation? So there is a type of ATV recreational use insurance that you can purchase. It's specifically designed to provide liability coverage for operating ATVs and UTVs, and as I understand it, can also provide you with uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage under that. For example, if you're legally driving the ATV or UTV on the highway, or you're a passenger and it's being legally operated that way, there may be uninsured or underinsured coverage available under those kinds of ATV policies that you can purchase. I'm not an expert on that kind of insurance. I haven't actually dealt with a case that has that kind of insurance, but I understand it exists, and that's going to be the best type of insurance that you can have. Or if you're riding in someone's UTV, it would be good to know if they have that kind of insurance. If they don't have that kind of insurance, I think you should be very, very careful about riding in an ATV or UTV by someone else, because if they cause your injury, or if you guys are just injured because a car hits you, there's a really good chance that there's not going to be insurance coverage for you other than the auto insurance policy of the car or truck that hits you or injures you on the UTV. But that's all dependent on whether other people have insurance and what their limits are. In states like Wisconsin, you don't need a lot of insurance. The minimum limits are $25,000 per person. It doesn't go very far if you're injured or killed on a UTV. So something to keep in mind is realize that um, there's a good chance that if you're, let's say you're on a UTV or driving a UTV on the highway, the only likely source of insurance coverage is going to be if another car or truck hits you or causes a crash and they have auto insurance. That's typically for on-road use. There may be more coverage available for off-road use if, for example, the ATV or UTV is being operated on the property of someone who has a homeowners or farm insurance policy. And this is where it can depend on whether the insurance company is aware of it, whether they specifically mention it. You want to make sure that when you get an ATV or UTV, that you make it known to the insurance agent so they can get the necessary insurance coverage for you for liability protection on while driving an ATV on your property. A lot of times that coverage will not extend if you're driving it on someone else's property, whether it's a neighbor, public land, something like that. A lot of homeowners and farm policies will exclude coverage even if they provide liability protection for ATV use on the property. It may only extend to the property. So it's really, really important to know your insurance, to know whether it provides coverage at all in the first place. And more importantly, if there are limits or restrictions on the type of coverage that you have. It may depend on things such as, is the driver legally able to drive it? Are they 18 or not? Are you wearing seatbelts and helmets? Are you operating on a highway or not? And if you're operating on the highway, is it being done legally? Is alcohol involved? There's lots of different factors that can impact whether a particular insurance policy provides liability coverage or not if someone's involved in an accident involving a UTV or ATV. So I really want to put that out there because it's probably something we most of us don't think about. Um, don't necessarily, and sometimes it's things that people I think keep away or keep hidden from their insurance agent because they're afraid the insurance rates will go up. Well, that's not a good secret to keep from your insurance company because if you get into a situation where you need it, they're probably going to deny coverage anyway because you didn't disclose the fact that you had this ATV or UTV. So if you have that and you want protection for you and your family, it's really, really important to have that conversation with your insurance agent and um, be upfront with them. And especially, like for example, in Wisconsin, you want to. It's a very good idea to notify them in writing. Could be by an email or something like that. But it's really really helpful to have a written proof that you notified the insurance agent of the UTV, ATV, the request for coverage, and then if for some reason, um, either they don't get the coverage or the coverage turns out to not cover you, you have a decent argument against the insurance agent that it's their fault that you don't have enough insurance. But if you're simply relying on what you recall saying in a phone conversation or in a meeting, that's where it can become really difficult to prove that. And it's difficult in Wisconsin, at least, to establish um, liability against insurance agents unless they are expressly asked to obtain certain coverage and they fail to do it for one reason or another. So something to keep in mind. So um, I know I went over a lot there, and a lot of this is going to be gonna depend very much on the, particularities of the situation, the type of insurance, the language in the insurance. Uh, there's a lot of commonalities between insurance policies, but then there's also key differences that can come down to a word here or there in definitions of exclusions, things like that. So it's really, really important to be familiar with your policy and ask specific questions of your insurance agent as it pertains to ATV and UTV use, because what you want to do is to know and understand whether you or your family is covered for liability if someone is driving a UTV and injures someone else, or more importantly, if someone's a passenger on a UTV, under what circumstances, if any, is there insurance coverage available to them or to you if they're injured or killed while operating a UTV and ATV? Because if there isn't any insurance, it becomes much more difficult to recover damages. Um, but for the obvious reason that people tend not to have the financial resources to pay the damages that they cause. So that's why insurance becomes really important, and that's why it becomes, if you're involved in one of these incidents, you or a family member is injured or killed in an accident involving an ATV or UTV, it's a really good idea to talk to an attorney. Most consultations are going to be free, and just explain the situation, what they're going to do, and what you want to have ready with you is any insurance policies you can get your hand on, especially yours, auto, home, farm. If you have an ATV or recreational policy, get a copy of that, not just the declarations page, but the entire policy. You want to gather that. If possible, you want to get a copy of the insurance policy of other vehicles involved. That can be hard to do because the insurance companies may not provide that to you. But the lawyer is going to try and gather all that information, look over the insurance policies, and see if a claim can be made and if there is a policy of liability insurance that will apply to whoever was responsible for the crash, whether it's the driver of the ATV, driver of another car, sometimes both. We have comparative fault. Sometimes fault is not entirely one person's responsibility, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for liability insurance that will provide coverage by for whoever caused the crash. So uh, hope that's helpful. If you have specific questions about that insurance, send me an email. Just go to the description, send me an email or call or text. My information is below. I'll be happy to try and help you out. I'm putting together a resource for people that are either owners or have been passengers on UTVs and ATVs to provide more specific clarity and guidance on what to do so that you can at least be aware of what your options are. And if necessary, go out and see if you can obtain the type of insurance or at least find out how much it's going to cost because you can't get the insurance after the fact. Once someone's been injured or once someone's been killed in an ATV accident, you can't go back and get insurance retroactively, unfortunately. So that's why it's really important to deal with that on the front end. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. I appreciate anyone who caught the video either live or after the fact. Feel free to leave a comment or send me a message, and I'll do my best to respond to those questions or do another video if necessary. So, thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.